Chase Quinn is a writer who's written for MSNBC.com, TheGrio.com, The Huffington Post, and The Guardian. And he's also an activist for the LGBTQ community here in the Lowcountry. I sit down one-on-one with Chase for a special edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And be sure to download the free Quintin's Close-Ups app in your Apple or Google Play stores.
Chase Quinn, it's so good to meet you.
It's good to meet you too.
I appreciate this greatly. I know that as we sit here right now, you are a writer based in Charleston, South Carolina. And obviously, according to The Guardian, you actually previously worked for the Center for Constitutional Rights in New York, developing cultural advocacy tools and events on a range of human rights issues. As we sit here right now, what are those issues in your mind?
Gosh, where do I begin? We're facing a lot of issues. I think that making sure we protect LGBTQ rights is a huge issue. I think that racial justice issues continue to be very important. Policing and over-policing. I think that women's rights issues continue to be very important. I think in the current climate that we're in, pretty much any civil rights issue you can think of is something that we can't take for granted and that we have to continue in our daily lives to figure out how we can insert ourselves into the conversation and make sure we're protecting those rights in a proactive way.
What is that conversation like right now?
The conversation around
Those issues?
Well, I mean, I think that there are many different conversations happening depending on which side of the table you're sitting on. But generally speaking, given some of the rhetoric that has been coming out of the presidential office and the range of inequality that we're seeing in the potential rollback of a lot of the civil rights that we've gained over the past many years, it's just cause for concern. So I think the conversation is, like I said, kind of figuring out where you fit in, whether you're an activist, whether you're an organizer, whether you're an artist, whether you're a writer, and figuring out how to insert your voice into the conversation. I guess where the conversation is at is this is not a time to be passive.
And you talked about women's rights and obviously women's issues. And I gotta take you down the street to 68 Calhoun Street at the Charleston County Public Library. Obviously, you're on the board for the Friends of the Library. Mm-hmm. And coming up in a few weeks, you're gonna have the Black Ink Festival, which is an African American book festival. And this year, the speaker is the one and only Terry McMillan.
Yes, we are very excited. It's the third year in a row for the festival. Terry McMillan is, a titan in the publishing industry. She's a New York Times #1 bestseller. People recognize a lot of her titles, from Waiting to Exhale to How Stella Got Her Groove Back. I actually had the opportunity to meet Terry years ago. I don't know if she'll remember, but I was on a press tour because I was writing for MSNBC at the time, and she was there for a literary festival. And she's an amazing speaker. People should absolutely come out and support this event. There's also going to be a reception with Terry at Hall's Signature Events on September 7th, and people can find information for those tickets at charlestonlibraryfriends.org. And then the headline event and her keynote will be the next day at the main branch of the public library. So the Friends of the Library are, super excited to support this event. Brittany Mathis, the director of the Friends of the Library, has had a big hand in bringing this event together and bringing Terry McMillan to Charleston. So we're very proud and we're very excited. And I also just want to add, Terry McMillan is a huge draw, and you should come to see Terry McMillan, but you should also come to support local Black writers, because it's an opportunity for over 60 voices here in Charleston to come out, share their work, sell their books, network with other writers and people in the publishing industry. So we're very excited.
And obviously, you know, you talked earlier about meeting Terry Maryland on the press tour when you worked at MSNBC,
Yes.
and I know that you were a contributing book editor there.
Yep.
What was that like? Who was Chase Quinn as an editor?
That's a good question. So, as contributing book editor, which is a fancy title, my role really was to make sure, I was writing for the Griot, which was at the time an affiliate of MSNBC, and they didn't have a lot of arts coverage, they didn't have a lot of literary coverage, and so I was really filling that space at the time, and it was a fantastic opportunity for me. It was my introduction into journalism and into writing. I mean, I'd always been involved in writing in one way or another in college and in high school, but this was my first professional opportunity, and it was a great experience, and I pretty much had free reign to choose the books I wanted to write about, choose the plays I wanted to write about, the museum exhibits, and you know, I was living in Manhattan at the time, so it was kind of a smorgasbord of things to talk about. I had the opportunity to work with Joyanne Reed. She was the managing editor at the time.
Right.
So it was a really wonderful experience.
You talk about experience, and you talk about your first introduction to journalism. What has that taught you about yourself?
I definitely have learned a lot over the years. I think that it has forced me to take myself seriously as a writer, and to ask for the things that I want. It's forced me to develop some really important relationship management skills, because for anybody who's interested in going into writing or journalism or publishing, a big part of it is, and you understand this better than most, it's very much relationship-oriented industry, so you don't want to be burning bridges, but it's also allowed me to explore my own sort of identity through my writing. And it's given me a space, like I was talking about earlier, in terms of figuring out where you fit in on sort of this political spectrum, social spectrum. It's given me a space to assert my voice in a way that I'm comfortable with, and in a way where I feel, empowered. And that's through the arts.
And as we sit here and talk about the arts, this is a town that's filled with arts. What is the state of arts in Charleston in your mind?
One of the things that that I appreciate so much about Charleston is moving from New York. You know, I didn't know what was going to happen to sort of, what impact it was going to have on my writing career. Of course, I maintained relationships with my editors in New York, but I also knew, that I was going to have to build relationships here. And there is such a rich arts community here in Charleston, and I think it continues to grow. I will say that I am hopeful that as the city continues to evolve and change, and the more residential buildings and commercial buildings that are springing up all over the city, which is a conversation that everybody's having who lives here. I hope that there continues to be a space for sort of emerging artists and emerging art spaces, because I know through research that I've been doing for various things that I'm working on that has been a challenge for a lot of young people who are interested in having a gallery or interested in showing their work. With the high rents in downtown Charleston, it can be really difficult to maintain a space like that. And some of my favorite galleries have sort of had to close their doors in the short time that I've been in Charleston because of some of those issues. So I think that Charleston has a very rich art scene, and I appreciate it very much. There's no shortage of things to talk about, but I do hope that as the city continues to grow, that we create a space for emerging artists and emerging art spaces.
Who are those emerging artists in your mind?
Well, an easy one for me, because he was one of the first artists that I wrote about when I came to Charleston, is Fletcher Williams, III, who I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with. He studied for some time in New York and has exhibited in many different places, and I really like his work. The piece I did specifically was for an arts magazine called Bomb Magazine, and it was for an exhibit he did, I don't know, was it a couple years ago at the Firehouse? I can't remember what the name of the space was, but it was a fantastic exhibit, and it's a good segue because what he was doing in that exhibit was he was taking sort of the detritus of this changing Charleston and turning it into artwork and turning it into a dialogue about how we preserve our communities, even as we grow as a city.
How do you preserve the LGBT community in Charleston?
Well, I think that it's a tough question because there is a very vibrant LGBTQ community here. There are a lot of LGBTQ business owners that I've connected with. And then you have community spaces like a bar like Dudley's, which serves a purpose too, being the only gay bar right now in Charleston. And they are creating different events around the city, which offers a place, a safe space and a place for LGBTQ people in the community to sort of meet. And then recently you had, I'm forgetting the name of the organization, We Are Family.
Oh yeah, I just interviewed Melissa Moore.
Yeah, who recently opened up their housing
on Meeting Street.
building on Meeting Street. So I think that's really going to create community, especially for young people in the area. And then you have organizations like AFA, who are doing work, and Southerners on New Ground, who are also doing work here in Charleston. So it's a combination, I think, of people just being themselves, making themselves visible in the community. It is a combination of nonprofits and organizers doing their part to build community, and then it's places like Dudley's, like I said, which offer a social component to that equation. Yeah.
And
Hopefully that makes sense.
Oh yeah, and let me get back to you. You talk about recently. You talk about obviously the LGBTQ community. You just recently won an award. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so I just recently won the Rising Pride Award, and it was, given to me by the Charleston Pride Board.
Okay.
It was totally unexpected. It was really welcome. It's always nice to sort of be recognized, and I've been writing and working in human rights for years now. And you don't get a lot of recognition in that kind of work, and writing in particular can be a pretty lonely endeavor. So that was really great, especially since I am not a native of Charleston. It was sort of nice to know that what work I do hasn't gone unseen. And I think that was one of the best parts about it, was it's sort of like you never know who's watching, and it was a reminder of that. So the award itself is for emerging leaders in the LGBTQ community here in Charleston, and I was just very humbled and proud to receive it, and to know that my voice here in Charleston as a gay African-American writer is important.
And obviously you've written for Huffington Post, The Guardian, a plethora of new publications, and obviously you're well known here in this town now. But Where will your voice go next?
You know, there's a lot of things that I've had a great deal of wonderful opportunities in my career, and you know, I'm still surprised, you know, by some of those opportunities. So I will definitely continue the art and culture writing that I've been doing, the political writing that I've been doing, but I know that one of the bigger goals for me is to write my own story, write my own book, and I've got some ideas, but I'm definitely still in the storybook phase.
Okay.
You know, so ultimately, though, I think that that's the goal. Is I'd like to publish my own book, and what shape that takes, I'm not sure yet. I guess I'm still in the research phase, so to speak. But I think that's the next chapter for me.
That's so good to hear. Well, Chase Quinn, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate this.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, and it's nice to be on the other side of the interview table.
You did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, yes.